Okay, we're way too loud again. Oh, she will?
Test. Test. Loud, Jen.
Does that work? All right. We must have a great agenda this morning. Look at all the audience. We're doing better than city council.
That's not always a bad thing.
I don't know if that's good or not. Excuse me. Excuse me. All right, we are all here. We'll give Tanner a minute
I'm really loud.
to get his stuff put together, and we will be on. Are you
I know.
ready?
It just is what it is.
Okay.
We'll deal.
All righty, we'll call this meeting to order this morning, 7:30. Glad to see everyone here, and Pat made it. Good deal. Call to order, or roll call, we've already done that. Would you please stand, and Nick is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And could I ask, do we have any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda? And hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes for January 8th?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mary Jo, I'd like to amend the minutes to include the proposed second amendment to the 2009 disposition and development agreement that the board approved on January 8th.
Okay.
We should attach those to the minutes.
Okay. And I think you have that, don't you, Lynn, so that you can just get that attached automatically. Okay. Then do I hear a motion to approve that correction to the minutes as well as the agenda and the minutes? Second. Second by Jan. No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that's unanimous. So we're moving on to Woodland Station. We've got several things to talk about on that. We had a very interesting conversation with Sally was there, Tanner, and myself, and we had a developer, Walt. Sally, help me with that. Harder. Walt Harder, and his friend Cleet Keller. I had my cards and I forgot them. Cleet Keller, and we had a very interesting conversation. They had talked about multiple housing in that area, and we went through the past, what we had and kind of cut to the chase, just gave him the straight information about the property. and he very much appreciated that. And he talked to us about it, gave us some suggestions, and he said with the encumbrances on that property and the cost of it, it's going to be hard for developers. So his recommendation, and we have a letter to that he wrote that backs that theory up. But he said an open space, or not an open space, but a event outdoor recreation space would be a good use for that property at this time till the market moves it in a different direction. So that was interesting. Tanner, I'd like to have you talk about the letter that he sent, and then Sally's take on the whole conversation with Walt. Would you do that? Okay.
Initially contacted us on the 21st. We scheduled a meeting February 1st, 9 a.m. Joe, and myself, along with Mr. Hardy, Mr. Keller. Let's see. Said he's been watching rents and inventory of the park for some time, and regional market is ready for additional multifamily. And Woodland Station is a location for house commercial. He is not surrounding property station. He asked for information from us having to do with how to be expended, and what our vision is for the property, and other things that we these questions and comments sure seem to us to be experienced development, a very good process, smart approach to exploring Woodland Station. We answered his questions as best we could, reviewed documents written such as the 2011 preliminary plat, overlay district design guidelines, and the DCAT service report. In essence, what we discussed with them, less interest in later in the discussion, he said other developers are pretty busy, surrounded with opportunities. Woodland Station seemed like an expensive, challenging property, not in the top of the list. He did, however, seem very excited, like two things. For Woodland Park. One, being the potential for a relief event, which would help the traffic on Highway 24 downtown, and the other being the outdoor multi-use space concept. Regarding the outdoor concept, he said that location would be a fantastic city park. Plant grass, get some ball fields or something like that. Concerts down there, that
Sally, I think I would like you to read that, but I would like to have Sally say her take on the whole meeting and the visit with them.
Mary Jo, can we have people speak at the podium, please?
I was just going to say that.
Thank you.
If Sally, if you wouldn't mind putting a microphone, oh, it's got one up there. Maybe just speak to the podium, and then that'll be better for everyone.
I don't have a lot to add. Tanner pretty much summarized the entire meeting. I think, though, it's important that you know that Mr. Harder was the developer for the O'Reilly and Family Tree project. So he is very familiar with Woodland Park. He's very familiar with the DDA and the development agreements, because he was part of that successful project.
Thank you, Sally. I think we'd have time, if you would read that letter. I think it's important to know that we really our input that other people have.
So his email came in on February 1st. That evening, after Sally sent some information, I followed up email and he replied, Tanner, I'm a big fan of cold water, early and hard. The bad deals are the ones where the water starts warm and gets colder and colder until you freeze. Kind of like boiling a frog, the opposite. The park is clearly open.
Here's one.
Is this better?
Yeah, okay.
Tanner, I'm a big fan of cold water, early and hard. The bad deals are the ones where the water starts warm, then gets colder and colder until you freeze. Kind of like boiling a frog, but the opposite. Same result. Woodland Park is clearly open for business, and I've always felt that way. You assembled the perfect group of people to make it possible for me to get a clear understanding of the potential for this project. If I, and most other developers, weren't neck deep in lots of other projects, I think it would bear the time and due diligence to root out a successful project. I think the stars have lined up for you, however, in another way. The combination of your potential bypass road and the availability of those 6+ acres invites the opportunity to create an incredible park. I would encourage you to study the effects of such attractive gathering places/parks within mountain towns to understand the profound effect they have on business and vibe of the town. A band shell, dog park, ball field, and playground would all fit comfortably in that setting. The musical talent that passes through Colorado Springs would love to play the venue. Be sure to include ample parking, and you'll have a draw like you've never seen. It will enliven your Main Street business and enhance values in a large perimeter. Improving the walkability of the corridor would be a smart undertaking as well. Once you take the Highway 24 traffic off that road, you'll be able to do some amazing things. Examples of this success can be found in Manitou Springs, Salida, Aspen, Buena Vista, Breckenridge, Castle Rock. The list goes on. I have no doubt that Woodland Park will become another cool destination for city dwellers in the years to come. You have one huge advantage over all the rest. You're a 20-minute drive from the second largest city in Colorado. Give them a reason to come. We'll be in touch, no doubt. Sincerely, Walt.
Thank you. Any comment or questions from the board? Yes, Jerry.
Basically a bypass. Can you guys elaborate on that?
It's a reliever route.
Okay.
Well, that might be better for Sally.
Well, in 1993, so 25 years ago, there was a very large effort to study a bypass for Woodland Park. And this was a multi-meeting, a large community effort, and our consultant at the time, AECOM now, or URS, the city's consultant, studied all the various corridors in Woodland Park, including the existing corridor, which was known as Corridor A, Corridor B, which would be an alternate route just south of Woodland Park, Corridor C, which is the actual historic old wagon road that was south of Woodland Park that the pioneers took. And I can show you a 1938 aerial that shows it very clearly on this aerial. So that was Corridor C. And then during this whole process, there was a discussion about Corridor D. And Corridor D starts down south of Walmart. There's a little saddle in the terrain and would head over toward and punch out by the hospital. So Corridor D is what the city had planned 25 years ago, and with CDOT's involvement, with the county involvement. However, that got shelved, partly because when we went to look at preservation of Corridor D and a fatal flaw analysis was conducted, the consultants were unable to get on property that they needed to survey. And the city was not that anxious to go toward a condemnation process. So fast forward 25 years, we see the congestion, we see the discomfort that our highway provides to our community and our businesses and our beautiful environment. So we have submitted to Pikes Peak Regional, not Pikes Peak Regional, PPR, Pikes Peak COG, the Council of Governments. They are doing right now an update to the long-range plan. And what we've submitted is a request for a planning study on Corridor D to resurrect this effort to move forward with studying the potential for a reliever route. It is CDOT that wants us to call it the reliever route. So this study is called a Planning and Environmental Linkage Study, a PEL. And we're going through the process of evaluating all the studies in the region to determine where we fall in the funding of this. So that's our next step, is to try to obtain funding for a PEL, P-E-L study on Corridor D.
Sally, last I'd heard it was like astronomical cost involved, and it was pushed beyond our lifetime, basically. So I was just curious as to what changed.
Well, I'm a planner, and I planned for 7 generations. So if this had happened in '93, we'd be having a main street that had parking back on the main street, wider sidewalks. We could have a quaint downtown that would be a destination for those millions of people that live on the Front Range.
Well, how would, so this feeder route would not affect Woodland Station anytime soon? Is that correct?
No, but our horizon is hopefully that we can have something in place to move forward with construction in 10 years.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you. That
Well,
was very informative. Go ahead,
I'll
Derek.
just add that, is he been on?
Yes.
There's, sitting on the TAC, there is a study, but that study is in the queue essentially. for the to be approved. We're waiting for dollars from PPACG to fund that. There's 4 other projects that are ahead of it, but as Sally said, that will help with moving the project forward in the next 10 years. But it is there. It's being discussed, possibly being funded in 2019 if there's additional dollars that are available. So.
Good. Thank you. Any more comment from the board or questions? Is there any comment from the audience?
Hello, my name is Carrie Kilgore from Prestige Realty Group and a longtime resident of Woodland Park. I'm a little disturbed by the presentation, although I do like a lot of the ideas. I work with several developers here in town as well. The planning department knows I'm in often trying to vet out potential projects, both multifamily, single family, multi-use, things of that sort. I was just in a few days ago with Sally and Laura. My concern is, well, I think that an open space in this area has a lot of validity. I question whether it's the entire 6 acres. I also question whether or not an acre of condos is appropriate. Is it 1.5 acres? Is it 2? Is it townhomes and condos? Should there be some light retail attached to it? This is one group of 2 developers in a single meeting giving input into a very important parcel for the life of the city. And I really encourage you to use it as a stepping off spot, but not a decision point. I think it's very important that we take advantage of so much of the experiences, people that we have here in Woodland Park. We've got, I see Anderson Enterprise I see Tony Perry in the audience, myself. I mean, there's just, I know of a good 4 or 5, 6 people in this audience who have been very involved in the development of the city over the last decade. So I encourage you to consider a workshop or some kind of working group so that it's not just a group giving a recommendation, getting a decision that puts us back where we've been for the last 10 years and this parcel gets tied up. Thank you.
Mary Jo, may I comment? Yes. Darren, if you would share, I think one of the things, this is just sharing of information at this point, if I'm not incorrect. I think Darren spoke recently about, we've got a strategic plan process on the horizon with the city council, staff, and the community. We've also got go ahead, Darren, if you would elaborate.
Well, we will be embarking on our strategic planning process probably in the next 2 to 3 months. As part of that, that'll help provide a vision. Hopefully there's a discussion, we've had a couple discussions with several economic development experts in the region, and a lot of what they're recommending is identifying what the value proposition is for Woodland Park, being able to kind of articulate that through the strategic plan and kind of carry that into our comprehensive planning process. Comprehensive planning process, even in the strategic planning process, will incorporate input from the community, and I think that's important in this process. I will say one thing. I think one of the discussions that Sally and I had, I mean, always good to get input from local developers and the obstacles that they have, but clearly, if in a way, the tools that DDA has, purely residential is not a good return on investment for this property. I mean, you're not going to get what you want from that, but other options would be good in terms of commercial mixed use. But if you were to provide a TIF, which I don't believe was discussed during this, that would be a good probably return on investment for the property at Woodland Station, but always up for discussion, and that would be something that would likely be discussed in the strategic planning process and the comprehensive planning process.
And just to add to that, part of the vision of the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan is not only involvement of the council, staff, community, but also the Downtown Development Authority, the Main Street group, and any other group that's involved in and interested in. And Carrie, I appreciate your comments completely. We're in the same business, and it's very important that those considerations are on the table. And I think that you'll be pleased to see the plan for evaluation as part of this whole process, and very inclusive. So if that helps at all, thank you, Vera.
Sorry, Sally.
I think Carrie's comments are really important, that the DDA board members really give a lot of thought about Woodland Station, what's next, and I would be happy to participate in a workshop and share with all of you the history of the Woodland Station. I have compiled a PowerPoint of all the various plans. I think it's up to 18 or 20 slides, different plans over the last decade or so, as well as a chronology of the funds and the cost of what has already been spent on this project, this property, so that you have a full understanding of what has transpired over the history of the DDA associated with Woodland Station, and then make an informed decision of how you move forward.
Thank you, Sarah. Any more comment from the board?
Well, I kind of do. I'm just need to clarify who determines the use, how Woodland Station is developed. Is it us? Is it the city? Is it Main Street? Who's in charge of making that decision?
I think that depends on who you ask.
I think so too.
I would tell you it should be the market. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And
That's
for
where it
us,
starts.
yeah, for us to try and strategically plan the development of Woodland Station and come to any sort of conclusion at a time like this that a TIF on the property would yield a return on investment is a waste of everybody's time. We have no idea what the market's interest will be in the property, what the value of that would be, what the timing of that would be, what the scope of it would be. We can't predict that. And trying would be repeating the history that Sally's willing to help us come up to speed on and review. That's a long history of trying to plan a development that should be planned by the free market. So I have very little interest in studying the history of it all, quite honestly. I'm familiar enough with it. I have very little interest in evaluating the market here and trying to craft plans for the property. I think that would be a mistake for us.
And I
think it would be
don't think that's what's being suggested at all. I don't think any development is ideas are being, I think of vision. I think and analyzing what's going on in the market. I mean, the strategic planning and comp planning process gives some visioning, not development.
What kind
and
of
not
vision
a plan.
are you, I mean, what would be included in?
I don't know, because that's a process that's inclusive. That is brainstorming.
Kelly, I
if you
think
will.
Darren wants to.
Thank you.
Again, I don't think this necessarily applies directly. I mean, the strategic planning is the entire community in general. In terms of the value proposition of Woodland Park, its proximity to the second largest city in Colorado, and how we as a community can really take advantage of that and help it push forward. We have 30,000 residents that drive through, not residents, but traffic that comes through. There's certainly potential to this community, and capturing that potential is how we make this a destination. And so how do we do that? And so that's a discussion we need to have. Woodland Station is definitely one of the potential development opportunities in Woodland Park that we can use to help be a catalyst for not only our city center, but also the businesses in and around it. So we should have a discussion, and I think that's what strategic planning is about, is having that discussion and seeing how City Council wants to move forward, including Main Street and DDA in the process. The history is important, but what we're not saying is let's have a developer come in and give us a bunch of plans. We're talking about let's have we've talked to many developers. You were right there when we talked to Kevin Kratt, Tanner, and so he's not the only one that I've heard that from in terms of we need a vision for the property. We've had many visions. Some of them have been ours, some have been developers, but we certainly need a vision on how we see the property being utilized into the future. The highest and best use is what we would obviously hope for. So we're looking to see, if we can get that vision established, and then incorporate that into our comprehensive planning process later in 2020. I don't disagree. We've went through this a lot of times, but I don't know how much community input was involved in that process. I don't know how much collaboration was included from Main Street DDA and the city. It seems to be very independent opportunities between individual organizations, and I think we could all benefit from having a more collaborative process. And that's how I think the strategic planning and the comprehensive planning process would be. So that's all I have to say about it.
Thank you. Al?
Mary Jo, we've certainly been talking for a long time about what to do with that piece of property. We're focusing, I think, on the finished product and not enough, I think, of awareness of what some of the problems and the risks that particular piece of property offers. In order to attract a developmental process, we've got to be able to define what these risks are to the developer, how they can be mitigated, and how then we can then potentially move forward to a finished product. A reflection on that, is one, could be the terrain that's there. What kind of risks and problems does the stream or the ditch that runs down through it, how to mitigate that? Adjacent properties, how that impacts the whole project. So until we define some of that, it would seem like it would be harder for a developer to put together a development plan. And it's going to certainly impact our vision.
Definitely will. Thank you, Al. And I'd like to say, go ahead, Tanner.
Well, to comment on that, I completely agree with what Al just said. But that whole statement, that whole concept is built on the premise that it's okay and that we should be taking the citizens' tax dollars and using them to buy down the cost of developing the property. That's what we would be doing after we define those challenges. They're largely defined. Okay, we know there's going to be large infrastructure cost. There are topographical challenges. There are drainage challenges. There are soil issues. It's adjacent to a trailer park and a Quonset hut. We know a lot of the challenges. There have been 18 years of figuring that out. The question then is, how do we cause development? Well, that's the question, isn't it? That's the fork in the road. Should we be using public resource to be a catalyst for the development of the property? We certainly can. If we save up enough tax dollars and spend them, we can find a way in the long run to pay for streets or to mitigate soil issues or change topography. But to what end? To be the catalyst for development that isn't coming to Woodland Station otherwise? I would argue we still have enough land in the city for development that the market will bear without public assistance. That we should consider just letting that happen. If a valuable enough proposal for development comes our way, great. There's a proposal for us to consider. Someone willing to buy the land, someone willing to put millions and millions into developing it. We could sell it, we could convey it, we could facilitate the development. But that's not been the case so far. Those who have come and expressed interest have largely all ended up at the same place.
Yeah.
And that's
And
nothing,
that's
doesn't
where,
pencil out.
that's where we
And-
are, that's where we are today. We do not have anyone that's stepping forward, ready to take on that errand.
And I also want to say, I was there for part of the meeting with Kevin Kraft. But I was also there for the meeting with Kevin years ago, back when he first looked at that property, back when the city was trying to develop that property with massive city resources. 14 million city dollars for an aquatic center, could not get it done. And that's at a time we had an entertainment center trying to go in there, and a team with interest in Lot 2 and a contract on Lot 2 to develop it. And combined, it could not be done. The DDA was in a position to convey land at no cost, use TIF, as was suggested earlier, to help facilitate it, and it still did not happen. How much public resource are we willing to expend for the purpose of bringing about development versus maintaining a public space until such time that the proposals coming our way are of more value and require less public subsidy? That's the question in my mind. I don't really care to vision for the property anymore. You guys want a vision for Woodland Park, so be it. Vision for the property in my mind is, we've had this talk, clean it up, beautify it, and put it into a state of being utilized by the community. It'll be of some value, and that was Kevin Kraft's recommendation. He said Central Park. Clean it up, give the community a place to gather and use it until such time that there's greater value. And almost exactly the same recommendation was just made by another developer. This isn't just two people from out of town. This is a conversation that's been going on for years. The public attends our meetings. This isn't just us trying to decide or just listening to one other person telling us what to do. This is a whole community having this conversation. When it was asked at our summit with the city, who thinks that until it's more developable, Woodland Station ought to be open space? There was probably every single hand in the room that went up. Every hand. What does that tell us? I don't sit here to make decisions for everybody and tell the community what I think should be done. We're here to do what we think the community would do. We're representatives, right? I think it's clear what they would do. It's time to move forward.
Well, and I think if we move forward, and we've spent a good amount of time talking about this, and I think that we've had a lot of talk and a lot less action. We still have a piece of ground that's an eyesore that could be used. It could be helping our downtown district in any way without putting a lot of money into it, without putting facilities in there that are permanent. We could be using that, and that is what I'm focused on right now, is to start using that the best we can with what we have going on, and let the free market come forward and develop it as they will. We cannot force it. It's a fool's errand to even try. We've tried for 15 years, and it's not happening. So my proposal is that we move forward with this as a event, open recreational space, that we do it until viable development or developer comes forward with a good solid plan that can financially afford it. And I think that we can do that. Minimal cost, this may sound like a motion, and it may be, but we can do it at minimal cost and move forward this year, having local events and having outdoor recreational activities. Kurt? Yeah, go ahead and do it, because we're going to move on. We're going to get to the workshops to do with this.
Should be.
First, let me ask a question. Is this working? I don't think it is it?
Is it on?
It is?
Hold
used
it
to
in
having
hold
my-
it
Close
up
to your
your
mouth.
ear into it.
I'm used to having my voice just resonate a lot more than
You just have to hold
Okay.
it close.
like this.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
there you
Okay.
go.
Right, right. And we're time, so.
Okay.
Okay.
One question is, and I've heard you're kind of dancing around the question here, but it hasn't really been solidly put on, and that is, are you willing to listen, and I mean really listen and absorb and learn from the experience of experts who are very close to this, who have no conflict of interest, which is a fairly rare thing. A developer has a conflict of interest. They want to make money on it, and it doesn't matter. Once they walk away, and it's fine. The city has a conflict of interest. Darren keeps talking about a principle. I'm going to mix these together. What are the principles that are guiding your decision? When you're making a choice, what are the principles that are guiding that? You're skipping over what the principles are. The premises. Tanner has nailed it here. One principle of good governance, I've studied this at the PhD level for many, many years, is check your premises. Darren's premise is there should be a return on investment. What's a return? Return is a financial return, most likely. Where is it written? Where is it written that that's a guiding premise for this activity? Where is that written? Is a return, a financial return on investment, really the best interest for, let me put up another principle here, prosperity and quality of life. What we want to do, all of us, as everybody here and lots of people outside of here, are guided by a premise and a principle. We want to do things to enhance the prosperity and quality of life for all, or at least most of all, of our citizens in the region. Is the prosperity and quality of life best served by getting a financial return on investment? What does that mean? It means more tax. The return is more taxes. Is it more taxes into the government in everybody's interest for prosperity and quality of life, so that they can misspend it on more things? Is that really? Okay, let me skip ahead.
Okay. Yeah, because
I'm getting there. So another premise here
2 minutes.
is that you have to have development. This has to be development. Where did that premise come from? Where did that come from? You skipped over the whole thing that you need to develop this property. So we got to find developers. We got to have David Buttery spend millions upon millions of dollars developing plan after plan after plan for development.
Okay.
Skip that. Why is that a premise? It doesn't. Well, look what it's led to. Let me and this is important. Let me establish my credentials here just a little bit. You guys know this. We started the medical center project virtually on the same day that the DDA, not DDA, don't confuse that, Woodland Station was started. Just about on the same day. It was like in the same month. The hospital association did that. Some big differences. They were spending their own money, and they were guided by a principle. One is prosperity and quality of life for the community. They were guided by another principle, and that is that government makes bad decisions. And so one of the principles that was laid down in the very first meeting that I went to is we want to build something that improves health care in our community, but we've looked around. And people say that rural hospitals fail. Well, that's not true. Rural hospitals run by municipal governments fail. So a principle was, thou shalt not use government money so they can have influence on the running of this thing. That's been true till today. You need to establish some principles like that. And by the way, vision is just a euphemism for a plan. If you're going to set a vision, what is a vision? It's going to have parks, or it's going to have commercial development. That's a plan. Who's going to enforce that plan? If you let the vision be set by the market will enforce the plan. And it'll be tempered by tons of control that you have through zoning and other things. People can't do something that you don't want. You need to set the principles, and there's only a few, and then go forward with what will fulfill those things. And in terms of check your premises, virtually all of the premises I hear here are not just wrong, they are wildly wrong. They are the things that developed, that ended up with the scandal that we have right now. So,
Kurt, I appreciate your comments. I think we're on the same page.
I don't think you are.
Workshops that are next are what this is going to come out in, not at this meeting. So that is where
But
all
when's
of
it
this
gonna
will
come out?
forward. We're not developing it today. We have nothing on the table. We're trying to figure out how to move forward and do something with that property this year. And it will be very small, very limited, and that will come out in the workshops that we're going to go
Are you going to do the
next.
workshops?
Yes.
Is that
If we
understood? Because
can
I thought
get
that was a
to
question.
that point.
I think
No,
that
we're-
is the single best idea that you've had in the many, many years that I've been watching
That's
this project.
on the agenda.
And you need to listen to people like myself who have sat right down the road from you, taken an almost identical project, turned it into something that employs 250 people with high-paying, permanent, high-quality jobs, while you've got $6 million worth of debt and an eyesore that can be seen from a satellite.
We're working on that.
Take advantage of the people like me. I'm happy to tell you how I did that. And it wasn't just following my nose. I know how I did that.
Madam Chair,
I'm
can we
willing to
move
tell
forward,
you.
Yes,
please?
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So thank you, Kurt, for your talks, and you're welcome to come to our workshops too. But we need to move on past this. Back to my statement of, I guess I am asking the board, I don't know if this is a motion, to move forward on the Woodland Station, to the workshops, and to the Woodland Station to be used as an event outdoor facility for this as we move forward. Do I get a consensus from this board that that's what we want to do and have workshops to try to determine how to move forward with that?
With open space being a consideration during the workshop, correct? We're not making
Yes.
decisions or
No.
anything? Okay,
No.
thank you.
We're trying to get to workshop. We're trying to get to a
Just bring
consensus
clarity.
that we need to use this for what it is, the way it sits, with the least amount of money. We've got construction, dirt work going to be done in, I don't know, 6-8 weeks, and we have no plan. We have no idea how that dirt work should look. Nothing. We need to determine that. Yes.
Drew Stoll is here today in the audience, and
Uh-huh.
he has a presentation for us if there's time for it about, well, his experiences with landscape architecture and, well, on this very topic. Is that something that we're prepared to hear?
Well, I think that would be good. I think that some professional on as it sits on what we can do with what we have would be very, very useful. Drew, who are you? Drew, thank you. Yes, would you please speak up? And can you do it? 15 minutes?
This was planned.
You got it?
Sure, I can.
Okay. Is it working?
That's right. How about now? Yeah, good deal. All right. So I know a lot of folks that are here today. I don't know everyone. My name is Drew Stoll. I'm a landscape architect, and we actually just moved to Woodland Park within the last year. I've had my own consulting company for the last 6 years, and we moved that national company here to Woodland Park. We've been focused on creating our tourism company here in town, so I haven't really got out and do a lot of PR for the consulting side. but we continue to operate that out of our same location. So I'll give you a kind of an overview of this. And the reason I'm here today is Tanner just asked me to share some of my experiences. I don't have a particular opinion for this property, just that I can share my perspective on other projects I've done around the country and internationally, and just did a little bit of thinking about it. It's just kind of my knee-jerk reaction to what the opportunity is there. And again, I'm not vested in the property. I'm just a citizen of the community, but I, again, have a national consulting firm, and if I can be of any advice to your board and to the community, I'd be happy to do that. So that's why I'm here. So Great Outdoors Consultants, as I said, I have a master's degree in landscape architecture, and most of our work that we do as a consulting firm focuses around public space and outdoors and outdoor recreation. A lot of it has to do with national forests, national parks, federal lands, but we also do work for many state and local governments as well, having to do with outdoor recreation and open spaces. We actually have a team of people, about 6 to 7 of us, that are made up of landscape architects, civil engineers, community planners. I have a very broad background as a landscape architect, from community planning through many other types of projects, both nationally and internationally. But we also do a lot of work with GIS as part of supporting all of those types of work. So pretty broad diversity. I heard AECOM mentioned here today. I actually worked for AECOM for 10 years as a landscape architect and outdoor recreation planner. So really worked in that, it's one of the largest firms in the world, and really gained a lot of experience in working for that very diverse company. I already mentioned kind of the scope of our work. We again mentioned that we've done a lot of projects. Most of our work has been in public spaces, but we actually do work for private clients as well, passing a couple of our report samples around as for a few of these projects, and I'll kind of go into a couple of them in a little bit more detail. Again, we moved our national company here to Woodland Park last summer, and we're located right next door to the Swiss Chalet, in what used to be many different restaurants and bars and everything, and now that's, we like to brand it as the Great Outdoors Trailhead, meaning that we use that for consulting, we use that for giving information to the public on how to recreate on the national forest, and we provide rentals and tourism services through our company, Great Outdoors Adventures. My wife's my business partner in that venture. So just a couple of comparable projects that we had done just for ideas. This is a summer camp I actually grew up going to, and many years later they hired me as a consultant to help them do a master plan for the property. They had all kinds of circulation issues, but as many of you know, summer camps are about being in nature and having great social interactions and letting the pedestrian landscape really dominate the experience, and not letting the vehicles take over and cause risk and those kinds of things. So this project was really about giving some organization that the camp didn't have in circulation, but also allowing it to grow and really bring back some of the quality spaces that have been lost over time just through maintenance. You mow down the trees for the sake of doing easy maintenance, and then you lose a little bit of habitat in the process of doing that. But this Camp Jorn project is in Wisconsin, and they were very successful in doing a $3 million fundraising campaign with this plan to be able to move forward, not only to save the camp from bankruptcy, but also to move forward with some of the design elements that were going to make the camp even better moving forward. We're still in the process of helping Mount Princeton Hot Springs Resort with an outdoor recreation master plan. They have quite a bit of property that people don't ever see, and so the focus of it was creating a trails master plan. But we also help them to really look at themselves again and say, are we taking care of these quality spaces where people can sit down and meet each other and have conversations, and how do we control vehicles so that they still function but they're not dominating the experience of the resort. And this is a resort with a county road going through it, a river going through it, just all kinds of things going on. It's very busy, and there's lots of risks with all of that vehicle traffic through there, so helping them look at some of those aspects as well. This is a project we did. It was actually a very large-scale project. This is just one site we designed in basically what would be a state park in North Dakota, and this was for a new visitor center and overlook in the national park. But you can see we had to look at the vehicle circulation, but really create some wonderful plaza types of spaces, location of a visitor center, and what is the experience once you get out of that vehicle, because that's really what the focus of that project was, is to create this really great experience with an incredible overlook in this gorge one of the only places with topography in North Dakota, actually. So, but to really create a profound experience once you get out of the vehicle and have it be very pedestrian friendly, and a lot of interpretation as part of that as well. This was a project we did near Albuquerque. It was actually a brand new wildlife refuge. There's a national initiative to create urban national wildlife refuges so that you can not only have habitat near cities, but also to use those as education, environmental education opportunities, but also as demonstrations of how can you take what is a very disturbed landscape and make it into something that is very functional naturally, but also has value to those surrounding neighborhoods. And that was an important aspect of this one, is how does this bring quality of life to very poor neighborhoods that were adjacent to it, but also serve this kind of city level and state and even national focus of how do you have this site be a demonstration. We're talking about 500 acres of land, but really a really high value thing. And this, you know, got government all the way up to the Secretary of the Interior came and visited this site as an important project. So I just went out on the web and started grabbing some images and thinking about Woodland Station. I've spent some time over there just walking around and thinking through it as a landscape architect. And obviously the train theme is a really obvious one there with the rest area that's there now and the building that's there. I think it was done very well in terms of trying to keep the historic character of that. But and that picture of that train I did find actually was taken near Woodland Park. I don't think that's Woodland Station, but that is the actual train that came through here, I think. Just a picture I took on site of the architecture there, as we talked about. Obviously the Western theme is always something that's important to keep those roots in the community, and how can that be incorporated into the site, and really keeping the design theme of the site really vernacular, we call it in landscape architecture, making it real to the place. You feel like you're in Woodland Park, you're not in some artificial thing like Disneyland, you know. Obviously the history of Woodland Park, as I understand it, a lot of it has to do with logging and mining and the national forest, and the more recent history is now a major driver of why people come here, right? And they're coming here to see Pikes Peak and the mountains, and we always have to remind ourselves that's national forest. And we don't really, you know, I've even talked to the Tourism Association in Colorado Springs. They don't really talk about the national forest hardly at all in their promotion. They talk about Pikes Peak. Well, Pikes Peak is part of a national forest, and there's much more national forest than Pikes Peak out there. So how does the community relate to the national forest? And then you can see some of the architecture here from the CCC era that really is some of that architecture that has endured in time. You know, it's got the rustic style, but it's endured because the quality was there. It was really designed by really good designers, and that's why it's still attractive today. Just thinking about landscapes and plants and things like that, I think you can't go wrong with native, and you can't go wrong with the beautiful pine savannas. I mean, Woodland Park, right? That name means pine savanna. It means a valley with pine savannas, I think is essentially what that means. So looking at nature and the plants that are found around here, not only are those plants robust, it's why if we're talking about people that are coming here for a tourist experience, that's what they want to see. They don't want to see an artificial thing you might see in the city. I think they want to see that natural landscape, so really helping that influence the design process, whatever the project is. So obviously some really cool local architecture, just one snapshot of that. Looking at the community sign, the materials, the colors, the trees, all of those sorts of things. Of course, the tagline for the city as well. The farmers market, we know that that's an important aspect, and it's something that's growing in the community, and it's a wonderful aspect of any community that has a farmers market. But that picture also gives you an idea of the scale of the farmers market here in Woodland Park, and certainly it could grow over time as well. And obviously the setting around the park is, I think, a great location. Many city markets, and for example, I moved here from Fort Collins, and the city, the farmers market in Fort Collins is in a shopping mall parking lot. So that's like the worst place you could put a farmers market from an experience standpoint. Maybe if you put it along the edge of an interstate, that would be worse. But anyway, you really do have we have great settings here to have farmers market, whether it's at the current park or if it was at the Woodland Station. The views of Pikes Peak, obviously, that's one of the huge assets of the community, and so really celebrating those at Woodland Station, whatever happens there, I think is a very important part of the design process. Recreation and tourism, you know, I think I heard some comments about how can this space really have recreation value to the community, and I think there's also opportunities in there for commercial recreation, rentals of bicycles or whatever the case may be, but really keep that, because that's also help. You know, the citizens help fund, and this is important to the citizens first and foremost, but we know we're a tourism economy also in that. So how does that landscape also benefit tourism and outdoor recreation? So I just went and grabbed a bunch of images off the internet that I found on different types of farmers markets, and I'll just kind of point out a few points about a few of these. And again, these are just the farmers market specific things, so this isn't the whole topic, but you can see how pleasant this picture looks. And what makes it look pleasant is, first of all, it has a design to it. A lot of farmers markets, it's great that they're organic, but they're a little bit free-flowing. They're just a little bit messy looking, and you kind of lose a little bit of quality when every single vendor gets to decide what they want to do. You give them a stall, and it just kind of becomes a free-for-all a little bit. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that you can have a better quality by having some design for things like that. And so you can see here there's a continuity of everyone doesn't have to put up tents in this example. There's a shade structure and a range structure for those vendors. You have shade so you're comfortable. There's ample space for people to move around in there, and it just has a real nice design continuity to it. So that's kind of the big difference between a traditional farmer's market and something that's designed. And here, again, just another example, there's ample space for people to move around so they don't feel crowded. But you can see that the tents all have the same style. Just that small detail really gives it a different image than having 10 different color tents out there with different sizes and one falling over, and et cetera. Again, this one combines some actual seating areas so that you're not on your feet the whole time, but you have a place to sit down and enjoy some of those products that are being sold in that kind of a setting. This one, you know, combines a car show, which obviously I know that's important to Woodland Park, but other types of demonstrations and shows that can happen around a marketplace, I think keeps it active and changing every week or every month. Again, this one just kind of shows some continuity of design of the lighting and the tents, and in this case the vendors don't have to put up the tents. They either stay up all summer or they're just put up by authority, and then that's one less thing they have to deal with as a vendor. Has anybody been to the new development part of Buena Vista? Hold your hand up if you've seen that. So that's kind of a real innovative project in Colorado. There are a few of those around, but it's a combination of mixed housing and commercial. But really what the focal point of that whole development is what I'm calling a commons. In other words, they said we're going to create a plaza/park area right on the river, and that everything is going to be designed around that, because that becomes the highest value focal point of this whole new urbanism development that happened there. And so you can't see it in this picture, but on the left side of it, there's a new hotel that's there. There's restaurants with outdoor seating, with apartments above it. So those kinds of things where you're creating that common space, and that really ends up being the value that the developers then want to attach to, right? You're creating that high value space that is not only scenic, but it also gives you a view and also creates a social scene it's harder to do just purely on a private project. Estes Park, how many people have been to the Riverwalk in Estes Park? One of the most successful redevelopment projects in the history of Colorado. It actually happened because of a flood. It wasn't because they wanted. They had the motivation to really do it. A study had been done before the flood on what should happen. Basically, the community had turned its back on the river. It was the trash dump for the community. And once the flood came through and wiped a lot of things out, they said, okay, it's time to rethink this. And so Estes Park is a destination for the national park, but it's very much, just as much now, a destination because of the Riverwalk. And of course, they have the asset of a river flowing through there, so that's a huge asset they have we don't have here. But the point is they created a combination of commercial with public plaza linear along the river, basically, and all these different neat little design aspects of that. And one of the guys on my team, that's Bob Joseph, that's a landscape architect. He was the one that actually led that project for 20 years. He worked for the city of Estes Park. Downtown Fort Collins, the place I called home for 17 years. One of the most successful downtown plaza areas in the country. A lot of downtown plazas fail over time throughout the country because the community made the mistake of taking their main street, closing it, and rerouting traffic completely around it and making it a pedestrian plaza. And those fail from a commercial standpoint. Down Fort Collins had a funky kind of a side street at an angle that there was almost like an alleyway that they were able, there was enough space in there to be able to create a plaza. And of course those businesses had to reorient, right? That used to be like the alley. And then how do you now reorient all these buildings where you're looking on to the most valuable real estate in the whole city, which is a public plaza. And of course that's been a 20-year process to keep refining the design of that, the events, the programs, all of those kinds of things that happen there. But Fort Collins is definitely one of the best in the state for sure. Of course, they have 150,000 people, so that helps. Jackson Hole, Wyoming. This is more of an eclectic type of a typical farmers market, but the reason I included this one is they've centered their farmers market like you have in Woodland Park around a park, and so you combine that park space experience with the farmers market. And to me, that's kind of the ideal thing, and you have that here already with the farmers market in the park. This is just another example of a natural landscape associated with a farmers market. This is more of an open space / park that actually you can see they have some pony rides there, but they actually, a lot of parks really don't allow the commercial activity, and so Woodland Park's kind of unique that it does allow that. In Fort Collins, you hardly ever see any kind of commercial. You might have a special event going on in a park, but a lot of communities have just said, commercial activities are not appropriate in community parks and open space. But I think we should have, it doesn't mean they should all be that, but I think the public really wants to have some services that associate with parks, food and drinks and entertainment, and it doesn't have to be all the time. But I'm an advocate for commercial opportunities and services if they improve the experience of the people visiting that landscape. These are I just brainstormed some different design considerations. This isn't a complete list by any means, but what are some of the things to think about? And I heard a lot of people talk about these today. I think you mentioned that we need to think of, somebody else mentioned we need to look at the regulatory requirements, the design elements, the spaces, the architecture, things like that. But I think the programs too, depending on what the direction where it all goes, you really need to think about all of these things and how they all relate to each other. The circulation, the safety of pedestrians crossing Highway 24, if a lot of that would happen as it relates to access to that landscape, all those different aspects. So, and then one of the things that Tanner asked me to hit on also is I did pass around some examples of some of our reports, and whatever you end up doing here in this property, you really should have a solid document as a product at the end of it. And that document not only is your record of what happened, it's also something that your citizens have as a reference, so they can go and look at it and say, did you implement what you said you were going to implement in the plan? But it also becomes a very important fundraiser tool and something to gain support. It legitimizes your project by having a really nice document at the end. And again, it becomes part of the record, so it has that value as well. So that's all I had for the presentation. I see if anybody from the board has any questions. Or
Drew, thank you. Would you be interested, we're going to set up some workshops here. Would you be interested in participating in our workshops to see how we can move forward with you and with this? Obviously, you don't do this for free, and obviously, we don't know about our finances, what's available for this. That will have to come out in our workshops. Would you work with us on that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And one of the things I didn't mention when I was introducing our company is I have a lifelong career of doing public meeting management and facilitation. So I'm not sure if you guys can decide if I'm the right person for that or if somebody else should be, but I think you should have facilitation so that you can have an agenda and you can stick to it, and then you can also have consensus and also really, because you want that meeting, you want that workshop to end up, and we in the design field we call it one of the things we call is a charrette. You're going through a rapid process. It's a French word for cart, but you're going through a rapid process to make decisions or to at least get ideas on the table, but you have a specific, at the end of this meeting we are going to have some direction at least, or that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I'd be happy to help if you'd like a facilitator to
that
help
would
with
be
that.
good.
So.
And I'm very impressed too that you're local. That's-
You know, I'm glad to be here.
That's important that you're one of us, and it means something to you.
Absolutely, yeah, we're happy to
Okay.
be here.
Well, thank you, Drew. Yeah, and I would like you to participate, like I said, with the workshops, and to, if you wouldn't mind, be at least for a while.
Sure.
Okay.
Smart man. Well, I'm a business owner in town too, so I definitely hear where you're coming from, and I think you know, it's the whole the cart or the horse first. You know, you want to be able to attract people to make a space vibrant, but you know, I think the ideal scenario is that the vendors actually are businesses in town, and if businesses in town don't want to be vendors at events or at things, then that's their decision. But it's also a free marketplace, and so they have just as much opportunity to be there, be vendors, as somebody that's coming from outside the community. If the businesses in the community don't respond to be vendors, then I think, you know, initially you might have to kind of get yourself established and give up a little bit of value outside the community, but ultimately you want to be able to sell those at premium prices. And guess what? If you sell a vendor booth on a street next to the city park in Woodland Park versus a space that's designed for it, and they already have a structure, at least to keep rain and snow, you know, take some of their costs, and you can actually sell those at a premium price. But you have to get to the point where that site is successful and that you're really providing a quality space that's not like in Fort Collins, a farmer's market and an asphalt parking lot, you know. So I think you can get value out of those vendors, and that can contribute to the economy, but you have to have the quality has to be there. And they have to, not just quality in terms of the facility and the landscape, but also the quality of the customers, right? You need to be able to attract enough people from outside the community that are willing to spend top dollar for quality products versus this is cheaper than Walmart. We definitely don't want to go down that path of getting produce cheaper than Walmart. You want to provide higher quality produce so that people want to go there, or whatever the other products are. You know, that's the key, I think, to all of that. And I'm not an expert on those topics. Those are just kind of my reaction to your thoughts. But I think that should be definitely be considered, that we want this to strengthen the community and give the businesses in the community an opportunity to be there as well, and not let it all just be from outside. I think that would be a failure. And, you know, cities like Fort Collins, you're dealing with so much more population, so many more businesses. People don't come from outside the community. They're all from Fort Collins, but you're talking about 150,000 people to potential vendors, right? Woodland Park, we just are not going to have as many vendors locally, so. But I think you need to kind of really try to, you know, make it that premier experience rather than a bargain experiences in the long run, is what my thought. So.
Thank you, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions from the board? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We have 15 minutes.
But at the same time, I would caution a temporary park at Woodland Station, okay? Spending $250,000 to create a temporary park that would then create emotional attachment to that park, that would then be another stumbling block for development in the future, I think is a mistake there. We just spent, I don't know, $500,000 on Memorial Park Plus. We have a beautiful park there. I love going to that park, using it. But to take a piece of property that we're looking to develop I think multi-use, okay, it needs to go that direction in my opinion. But to spend $250,000 of taxpayer money on a park that you plan on tearing up, I think is a mistake. Does it create an emotional attachment to that park? That'll then be more difficult to tear that up at the time that it does have the quality and the equity to be developed. Okay? We're getting close to that point, I think. Okay, 10 years ago, I believe, Dale Snicker, who was on this board, came to me with a plan, showed me this beautiful rendering of what somebody thought Woodland Station should look like, and it involved taxpayer money to make it happen. My comment to him was, you can't force success on this property by spending taxpayer money. Don't do it with a park. The situation is right, the money will be there, somebody will develop it. And develop it for what would be the best use of that. You put a park there, that's going to hinder that development. That's my question. Workshop is going to be very important on that, okay?
Thank you. Moving forward, we have 15 minutes. Next one is the workshops on the agenda. I would like to set up 4 workshops, possibly 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening to give everyone an opportunity to make them. Do I have any comments from the board on that? What would be work for them? We do have Tuesday mornings available through the city. Suzanne has those booked for us. We can do them here in the morning. We can probably get the council chambers of the evening. Comment on this. The community. Who can make? Well, most of the community have jobs, so they can't come in the afternoon. I'm thinking evening and early morning. Early morning is the only time we seem to have this kind of turnout. Go ahead. Murph? Right. Exactly. Yes. Okay, so I would like to focus on February and March for these workshops. After March, we're all getting busy with spring, and it's harder to do that. So I would like to focus those 4. Again, I've asked about mornings and evening. Should we do 2 early mornings? That would include business people, and that would include us. Do you want to do them all in the evening? What are you thinking? Talk to me.
I prefer
Tanner?
evenings.
Evenings. Then we do all evenings. Does that work? I thought I had, I don't know who, somebody got my regular calendar. We can't do doodle polls for the community, so we'll just schedule them. We're going to set them up today, because this all we do is talk. We talk. We have been since 2011 with nothing. We've got a summer right ahead of us. It is marching on without us. We are going to do something. We've got dirt work that's going to be done. We have to know where that dirt needs to go. We're not going to get to that without workshops, so we have some kind of a plan in mind. So we will do this. So does anybody have a calendar that they could pull up and look?
How about next week?
So, are we going to pick a day? Are Tuesday nights good? We don't want to do it Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, not everybody can make every one of them, but we'll set it when mostly they can. Are Tuesday nights good? All right? Now, obviously, we're going to have to talk to Suzanne, make sure this is available, and we can use council chambers for this. But we'll shoot for Tuesday night, 7 o'clock or 6:30. No, we're not doing. We are setting these meetings. These are our meetings. We are going to ask Suzanne's. No, it's between the community, the DDA, the city, Main Street, and everybody else. Yes. Well, let's see. If it turns out to be that, we'll find a bigger place. Okay? We're set. Tuesday, 6:30 or 7.
That's a week from today, next Tuesday.
Works for me.
Earlier's better. 6:30.
6:30. So the first one would be February 12th. Do you want to do these consecutive or two weeks apart? Okay, two weeks apart. So we can do 2 weeks apart. So that'd be February 26th. And 2 weeks from that? March what?
12.
And 2 weeks from that, probably however longer they'll last. We'll make them 2 hours, and if they go longer than that, we'll try not to. And 26, okay? 6:30 to 8:30. And Lynn, would you mind contacting Suzanne to see if the council chambers would be available for that before we advertise this?
It might be a good idea, and I can look into this, to see these major school events, if you want families with kids, we probably want to avoid.
Well, you know, we're not going to, you know, and they can't bring their kids and all that. If they can make it, they can make it. Yeah, we'll try to schedule it where people can make it. If they either can or they can't, or they can read about it in the newspaper. Okay, does everybody have that? And we'll be sure you get notified. Then we'll start putting an agenda together for that to start it out. And Sally, do you want to participate in any of this? We'll include you in that agenda if you would like us to do that. Okay, you're on board with this? I don't know either. You on board with it?
I'm not sure what you're doing.
Okay, well, we'll talk later as long as you're on it. Darren, what about yourself? Count you into? Okay. Debbie. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. And that might provide more opportunity to come. You know, it is what it is. But we're going for it. We're going to do something. Right or wrong?
Yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay, huh?
That's right.
Okay. Yes. All right. We've got 10 minutes left. Board, do you have anything, comment to say,
Well,
Tanner?
there is cleanliness and beautification as item 6 on the agenda.
Oh,
Are
I'm
we
sorry.
tabling that, or did you want to have any discussion on it?
You know what, let's discuss that on the workshops. Let's not do it, because that's definitely, and we'll catch that at our next meeting. We'll work on it in the workshops. Does that's part of the workshop agenda. Anybody at the table, comments? Tanner?
Oh, well, Kelly's first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Kelly.
As the council liaison to this board, I will not be a voting member of the board of directors of the DDA, because I find that to be a conflict with my role in the city council. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. General discussion from the audience. Does anybody have any comments? Vicki?
I just wanted to remind everybody that businesses need to be included in any decisions that are being made. It seems like as if there's a lot of decisions being made on my livelihood, my investment. One recommendation that I do have concerning the Woodland Station is maybe we should check with the people that are gonna go in, bring in whatever equipment to get it ready for seating. I think maybe that might be something you guys need to look at in the budget and vote on that. If you wait too long, the ground might get too hard, and you will not be able to plant any seeds with any success. So, in my opinion, rather than forcing something on this property when it's open space or anything, right now is to make it look pretty and green. It's pretty and green, maybe somebody might be interested in it. I've mowed that yard over there, and it is a horrible thing to mow. With a hand mower. So I think planting grass will stop weeds from being this high. Instead, you might have grass this high, with fire danger. Make it look pretty. Beautification of Woodland Park, make it look interesting, so we might be interested.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, no one else from the audience? Tanner?
You know, I'm curious, after hearing Vicki and hearing Carrie earlier, there seems to be a perception that decisions are being made and without the input of businesses or community. I don't know what we can or should do differently, but there seems to be a concern. I mean, here we are in public, on the record, with open doors for everyone who cares to be a part of the conversation. We issue public notices of the meetings, meet at regularly scheduled times, live stream everything online, maintain the public record, put our minutes and everything online, along with video and audio. We've done everything but go door to door and grab people and drag them here. So how do we reach out better and make sure that everybody feels invited to participate and that their voice is being heard? Is there anything we should be doing differently?
That's a good question, and I don't know. I don't know, as our newsletter kind of fell apart in the newspaper, so we don't have that. I'm not sure it was working anyway. I don't know. Any comment on that? Yes, Vicki.
You look at the property, and it's same old. You have, it's not smoothed out, it's not heat every year, nobody can physically go in those areas. And that's why I'm saying plant some grass, make it look like something's happening. You get the curiosity up. Well, then after you get the curiosity up, maybe somebody might be interested in saying, hey, this is what I'd like to see there. But as long as it's ugly, no one's going to be interested in it.
That's why we got 4 workshops coming, and that's why we're going to do something. We're going to do something.
I think we need to find out when is the best time to plant the grass to make it green and pretty.
Well, I understand and completely agree with you on all that. My concern is more to the other comment you made about it seemed like decisions are being made and you wanted, with your interests, that affected your interests and your investment. And what decisions are those that you aren't here and participating in? What decisions are being made that you or others, not just you, but I'm saying you in terms of all all interested parties aren't included in, and how do we address that?
To me, it's a minimal expense. I don't know how much it would cost to plant the grass in that
We're
area.
talking about two different
We're
things.
talking two different things. All I'm saying is for immediate, to draw attention. Oh, look, it's starting to go.
Well, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing, and that's why we're doing it now, February and March, so that we're ready to go by April and May.
Is that when the optimum time? is
Yes, yes.
planting that grass?
It's not gonna grow now.
Correct. No decisions have been made, but we all need to participate in said decision making. And all I was saying is plant the grass now, make it look pretty, and then people will start having more ideas. It's kind of like restoring a plastic car. You have a car sitting in an old barn, you have no idea what to do with it. And then suddenly you see one in a magazine, same type of car. Okay, I'm going to clean it back to its original color, bright yellow. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that to it. But without, if it's just so ugly, most people, a lot of people can't see. They can't see what it was.
Thank you, Vicki. We understand. We are out of time. Debbie has something to say for chamber, and then we're done. Do you? Okay, that's good. It's 9 o'clock. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second by Nick. All those in favor?
Right.
Opposed? Nope. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Please join us at our workshops.